Congress MP Rahul Gandhi on British soil asking for European and American intervention in saving Indian democracy. Is Indian democracy really under threat, or is the Congress party facing an existential threat? And is Rahul in his head interchanging the threat to the Congress and linking it to what he perceives as the threat to India's democracy? To talk about this, I am joined on the news track by a key aide of Rahul Gandhi heading the Congress's social media operations, Supriya Srinath. With us, the man leading the charge on the part of the BJP against Rahul Gandhi asking for foreign intervention on India's parliament, on India's democracy. Amit Malviya is with us on this broadcast. For how this is playing out in Europe, internationally and in India, Sushant Sareen, leading strategic affairs expert, joins us, as does Sanjay Jha, who's been in and out of the Congress, and Swati Chaturvedi, well-known political analyst. I want to start by getting Supriya Srinath to explain why Rahul Gandhi seeking American, European intervention in saving India's democracy is something you think is correct, because ordinarily, if there is a challenge to our democracy, it ought to be fought from within the country. You don't have Indian democratic leaders going abroad and saying, come and help us. This is almost like calling on a foreign country to do your job. You should be fighting for our democracy. If you think there's anything wrong with the way Prime Minister Modi and Amit Malviya and the BJP are running this government, why are you asking for American and European help? Supriya Srinath, let's start from there.
It's quite ridiculous and actually very shameless and brazen for large sections of the BJP, and I'm saying large sections, to turn into 2 rupee trolls, distort Mr. Gandhi's versions, speak blatant lies, and for some sections of the media to amplify it without even putting their minds and fact-checking it. And with your kind permission, I think let the man speak for himself. I will play a 35-second bite of Shri Rahul Gandhi and exactly what he has said. Before I go any further, Rahul, I had always thought that the BJP struggled with putting Hindi out because that's what they were doing. They were distorting the truth during the Bharat Jodo Yatra. It seems they struggle with translations in English as well. What else explains a perfectly banal statement made actually about putting Indian democracy, calling it a public good, at the center, and the BJP making a hue and cry about it? And I hate to say this, some of the people who represent the BJP here or otherwise are actually acting like 2 rupee trolls. They have been called out time and again for spreading fake news, and they continue to do so because that is what their whole existence is all about. And I will seek your indulgence for 35 seconds as I play this bite, because this bite needs to go to the people and for the people to understand such blatant lies being peddled by fake news, fake news departments of the BJP and some sections of the media. Just seeking your indulgence, please, because this is important that people should know what exactly had he said.
No, it's our problem, right? It's an internal problem, it's an Indian problem, and the solution is going to come from inside, it's not going to come from outside.
And he goes on to say that 1.4 billion people inhabit the Indian democratic system, and the fate of our democracy is going to determine the fate of democracies on the planet. He's putting India right at the center of democratic values, and people have an issue with it. I really want to understand. Do they not understand English? Are they failing to translate into Hindi? What's really happening here?
You've set the context for this debate, and you've also done what you're accusing the BJP of doing, which is playing one part of the comment, because he does go on to say that Europe and the United States aren't doing enough when Indian democracy in danger. So he said both things, but let's get Amit Malviya to respond. The Congress's charge is that you've used one part of the statement where he says Europe and the US are not doing enough for Indian democracy, and you aren't showing the initial part where he says the work has to happen within our country as well. So it's not as if he's only calling for their help. He's trying to draw the world's attention to what he thinks are failing institutional standards in our country. It's something that, as somebody in the opposition, he has a right to be concerned about, and you're only quoting him in part. Mr. Malviya, let's start from there.
Well, Rahul, the elitist scorn that the Congress spokesperson heaped on the BJP for not understanding English is quite rich, because if the Congress spokespeople have to routinely step in to clarify what Rahul Gandhi said, then it is a problem with his communication and not with BJP's understanding. Let me counter a clip by another clip, and this clip is of Rahul Gandhi. He said this at the International Journals Association meeting. What the Congress is quoting is a subsequent bite of his from the Chatham House discussion that happened later, when they realized the faux pas that Rahul Gandhi had committed. Let me play that out for your audience, because a clip should be countered with a clip.
So the surprising thing is that the so-called defenders of democracy, which are the United States, European countries, seem to just be oblivious that a huge chunk of the democratic model has come undone, right? Which is the real problem. Rahul Gandhi, what happens to you?
Let me also play another clip, Rahul, that he spoke in the Parliament of Britain, and he was addressing a group of MPs.
Is a global public good. India is big enough where if democracy is weakened in India, democracy is weakened on the planet. So I think it's very important when you think about what is happening in India, you also keep in mind that India is a democracy 3 times the size of the United States, 3 times the size of Europe, and if this democracy crumbles, it will be a huge setback for democracy on the planet.
So here is Rahul Gandhi making that plea twice, once when he was interacting with a group of journalists, and then on another occasion when he was addressing some members of the British Parliament. Now, when you say something like this to a bunch of parliamentarians, you are by extension appealing to the government of Britain to interfere in the internal matters of India. Now, as far as democracy in India is concerned, clearly there's nothing wrong with it. We have a functioning democracy. We have electoral process, we have the judiciary, we have the executive that is doing its job, and the Congress is still relevant in a few states. But for Rahul Gandhi to step out of the country and seek intervention of foreign powers in India's internal matters and to seek restoration of democracy is a serious problem. Now, this is probably for the first time, Rahul, that somebody from the Congress party has been so brazen and has walked down this path and sought foreign intervention. We had heard about Indira Gandhi seek financial support from foreign agencies, but this is another level. And clearly for Rahul Gandhi to make these assertions, to undermine India's institution, undermine India's parliament, which incidentally he does not attend too often, and then to make statements that opposition voices being stifled and that people are not able to speak, and there is a perception of minorities being under threat on the day the BJP wins in states like Nagaland and Meghalaya, which is almost 85–90% minority dominated and a huge tribal population. So there is something very problematic about Rahul Gandhi's understanding of
Amit Malviya's counter is
articulation,
Rahul
and it
Gandhi,
raises several questions.
Rahul Gandhi's track record as a parliament, that's abysmal. The Congress's record in the recent northeastern states was abysmal. Yes, there is an existential threat to the Congress, but let's not equate that with challenges before India's democracy. There are always challenges before any democratic system. That is inherent to the nature of any democracy. But Rahul, going abroad, asking for, he's basically saying India is becoming non-democratic, democracy has been undone, he's feeling shocked at the lack of reaction in Europe and the United States, seeking international intervention in India's internal matters. When you were in government and somebody else did this, you'd be aghast with what the opposition has done. Why is Rahul Gandhi doing this?
No, so before I answer your question, I first want to put on record how weird it is for me to hear from someone who was flagged off by social media platforms for spreading fake news. You know, my counterpart in the BJP has had several flag-offs. बहुत बार इनको ट्विटर ने बोला ये मैनिपुलेटेड ट्वीट्स चलाते हैं, ये झूठ के सरगना है और मैं इनके मुंह पर बोल रही हूं, ऐसा करना बंद कर दीजिए। आप भाजपा के ऑफिशियल हैं, ऐसा करके आप दिखाते हैं कि आप झुट्टों के सरदार हैं। और मैं हिंदी में इसलिए बोल रही हूं क्योंकि उनको मेरा स्टेटमेंट एलिटिस्ट लगा था। मैंने तो हिंदी में भी बोला कि आप भारत जोड़ो यात्रा के हिंदी को भी
can I request both our guests not to get personal, please? Ma'am, we're debating ideas here. We're debating this demand
no,
that...
Second. I have an issue with that. One second, Rahul, one second. Don't lecture me. No, Rahul, one second.
I'm not lecturing you. I'm just saying, let's just focus on ideas. Let's focus on contesting views of whether international help is required or not. Let's stick to that. Yes.
Rahul, don't... No, you can't put words into my mouth. I'm here to speak a certain line that I will take. You can ask me to leave your channel, but I will say what I have come prepared to say and what I will say. And one of those things is that the person sitting here has been flagged off by social media platforms for spreading fake news. I want to actually play a counter clip. Forget about everything else. Let's play this counter clip so that people get to know who says what when they are on foreign soil. Please listen to this.
देशों के मुखिया इतना आत्मीयता, इतनी निकटता, इतना भाईचारा ये अपने आप में
Prime Minister of India on China, but that's not the cherry. The cherry on the cake is this. Please hear it. Because this is what the Prime Minister said about the country and our people when he was on foreign soil, and foreign soil no less than China. Please hear this.
छोड़ो यार, डूब गए, कुछ होगा नहीं। अरे भगवान बचाए भाई, पता नहीं पिछले जन्म में क्या पाप किए हम हिंदुस्तान में पैदा हुए हैं।
The Prime Minister of this country, elected by people of this country, representing 140 crore Indians, including you and I, goes to China and says that people used to curse their luck because and their destiny because they were born in India. You think this is glorifying the country? And actually saying that America and China are pulling the world in two different directions and Indian democracy is a public good. And we are what the world wants, espousing Mahatma and talking about the values of our constitution in foreign land, telling the British press, telling the British people. You think that's wrong? I am appalled. I am absolutely appalled by the level to which the BJP can stoop to demean and defame Rahul Gandhi. But guess what? Every time you do that, I'm convinced about one thing. Rahul, one second. I'm absolutely convinced about one thing. The lower they stoop, the more Rahul Gandhi rattles the living daylights.
The essence of your counter is, even when BJP leaders have been abroad, when they were in opposition, they have lambasted the dysfunctional Indian system, and they have and that they've said all kinds of things about what was wrong with the Indian system. This is what you expect from a leader of the opposition. He's not going to go to the British Parliament or to Europe and to tell them how great India is. He's in the opposition. He will very naturally find fault. Just deal with it, live with it.
Prime Minister, which is even worse.
Okay, you've cited instances of other leaders doing this in the past as well. Let Mr. Malviya respond.
Rahul, I'm not going to scream and shout and level allegations at the conduct of the Congress spokesperson because she's a foul-mouthed, uncouth woman and everybody knows about it, but I can't stoop down to her level. So I'll stick to substantive issue. And the substantive issue here is Rahul Gandhi and his incoherent speech. Rahul Gandhi has to be interpreted and reinterpreted again and again by their spokespeople or people aligned to them. There's clearly a problem with Rahul Gandhi's articulation. Secondly, she quoted the Prime Minister's speech. Now let me make the distinction between what the Prime Minister said and what Rahul Gandhi said. The Prime Minister was speaking to the Indian diaspora. The Indian diaspora has a stake in India's well-being and progress. He was speaking about the despondent times of UPA when there were scams worth crores of rupees and there was no one who was held account to. Therefore, for him to speak about the situation of governance back home is not the same as Rahul Gandhi going to the British Parliament and pleading to the members there to save India's democracy because it is not delivering in favor of the Congress party or Rahul Gandhi. It is not the same as seeking intervention of Europe and America. To speak to the Indian diaspora is the right of any political leader, whether he's a Prime Minister or Prime Minister wannabe, but to go to sovereign countries and seek intervention are two quite different things. And let's be very clear, Rahul Gandhi here is in violation of the oath that he has taken as Member of Parliament, which says specifically that he would uphold the sovereignty and integrity of the country. He has compromised that by his utterances, which are really not thought through. But having said that, I think it's become quite a routine to have Rahul Gandhi go out and say all kinds of things which embarrass the country, which naturally do not put him in good state himself, but it's something that we have to live with because the Congress insists on foisting him on the country, and the country continues to reject him. Now, the rejection that he has been handed out not once but twice and several times in several electoral contests, he must learn to accept that people have rejected him. Rahul Gandhi is Congress's problem, not the country's problem. So he can make his argument, he can speak for his ideas, but he cannot seek foreign intervention.
That's an important counter from Amit Malviya. He's saying you can berate how the government is functioning, and that's totally legitimate. You can be wherever in the world and say that the Indian government isn't doing a good job. The difference is Rahul Gandhi is seeking international intervention in India's affairs. That's the last thing you want.
Are you seriously saying that?
He's basically saying that.
I am appalled. You know, Rahul,
he's saying the lack of reaction of Europe and the United States. One second. He's saying, ma'am, I'm just, okay, go on. He's saying, I'm feeling shocked at the lack of reaction in the United States and EU. It's because of trade interests that they're not saying anything about this.
Mr. Kaval.
Yes, ma'am.
I get that. Rahul, I'm actually more dismayed by you than Mr. Amit Malviya right now. Amit Malviya's life and existence depends on defaming Rahul Gandhi. I can't imagine that you just said it's all right to defame political parties and opponents when on foreign
I'm not saying defame. I'm saying you want to attack them, go ahead. He's asking for European and American intervention. That's the argument.
Let me just finish. Please let me finish. Well, let me finish. Do not intervene. You heard him. Absolutely abject silence. Offer me the same silence. That's the courtesy I expect from you as an anchor.
Certainly.
I'm dismayed, and I will use the word dismayed and I will use the word appalled with the inference that you're drawing. You are actually saying that Mr. Modi is absolutely right with what he said on foreign soil. Mr. Modi saying what has happened in 70 years, nothing has happened. A lost decade. Mr. Modi saying people in India cursed their destiny because they were born here. Are you saying this is all right for India's Prime Minister to say this in foreign land? If you are, then there is no debate. If you are, there is already a jaundiced view and a judgment that you have already passed, and I don't think this debate needs to happen. I made a very simple assertion. Mr. Malviya can either say yes or no to that. Has he been flagged off by social media platforms for spreading fake news? Yes or no? The answer to that is a yes. He gets personal, calls me uncouth, calls me foul-mouthed, calls me stooping down to my level. You have no objections. Forget about all of that. This is not personal. The reality is Mr. Gandhi delivered his lecture on the 28th of February. We are speaking on the 9th of March. 9 दिन से ये लगे हुए बेचारे, इनके पास कोई काम ही नहीं है और करने का. You talk to them about high prices, they will say हम लहसुन प्याज नहीं खाते. Talk to them about unemployment, पकौड़े तल्लो. Talk to them about China, nobody has entered our territory. Talk to them about Adani with trembling hands, he will keep having water because gala sook raha hai. The reality is you can keep looking the other way, but you are a government that jails a 21-year-old climate activist. How can you talk about democracy? You are a government that raids a research institute. You are a government that puts a man behind bars because he as a journalist tried to put out a story where मिर्जापुर में लोग नमक रोटी खा रहे थे. आप यहाँ पर आकर एक्सेंट में अंग्रेजी बतियाइएगा और हम आपकी बात सुनेंगे, ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता है. असलियत ये है कि इस देश के कानून व्यवस्था के खिलवाड़ आप कर रहे हैं. The reality also is that the Supreme Court of this country has passed an order, a judgment, which says that the election commissioner and the chief election commissioner will be
no, but that's what you are citing as a problem is actually evidence of the fact that democratic institutions are alive. The fact that the Supreme Court comes out with this kind of an order against the government of the day shows that you must have much greater faith. You must have much greater faith in India's institutions than you do.
Please read the judgment. I am hoping and presuming as news director of the India Today group, you have read the judgment. The judgment says words like unsatiable thirst for hunger.
Of all governments, of anyone who is in power. This is once again, I've read that judgment, and the judgment is very clear.
Came up until now?
Because the case went to the case went to the court now, and the judges very clearly say that this is. I'm not holding. Once again, I'm not holding the brief for any party. Once again, just let us go down. We hold no faith. Once again, we just ran an investigation just a couple of days ago, which had one section very upset. We hold no brief for no one. It's as simple as that. But to have an Indian leader asking for external intervention is a matter that needs to be debated. There can be no doubt about it. And the Supreme Court judges are very clear. They say anyone in power, it's not true for government A, B or C, anyone in power would want election commissioners who are favorable to them, which is what the Supreme Court judgment says as a fact, not as an opinion. But let's go back to Amit Malviya on the substance of Supriya Shinde's response, which is that if Rahul Gandhi is as useless as you claim that he is, why are you spending so much time, energy, ammunition attacking him? You've been attacking him since the time he went there. If he is as big a disaster and is as much of a blessing for your party, just let him be. Why are senior leaders, you yourself, Ravi Shankar Prasad, so many others constantly attacking him? Mr. Malviya.
You know, I thought this debate was about Rahul Gandhi and the statement that he made, but I see the Congress spokesperson is more interested in discussing me than defending her boss, which essentially is equating me to her boss. While I find it flattering, but I hate this comparison with Rahul Gandhi because I think he's daft, and that is why he's gone ahead and made these kind of statements and repeatedly at it. Secondly, Rahul, let me explain to the folks from Congress what a functioning democracy actually is. A functioning democracy is where there is a conversation between the legislature and the judiciary. So if the judiciary has come up with a certain ruling and the central government accepts it, unlike the Congress party which routinely overturned judgments of the Supreme Court to have its way, we haven't done so. That is a functioning democracy. A functioning democracy means there are elections, and if you lose at the hustings, that is your problem because people do not relate to or identify with your ideas or your leadership. The problem is not with Rahul Gandhi. The problem is that the Congress is trying to thrust Rahul Gandhi on this country, and the country does not want him as somebody on the helm. And if, I repeat again myself, if the Congress has to continuously defend Rahul Gandhi's statement, use other speeches that he made at different times to cover up for his faux pas, then clearly he's not somebody who's even fit to be in public discourse. Okay. I repeat again, Rahul Gandhi is the Congress's problem. He is not India's problem, and Rahul Gandhi must understand that the choice that 600 people have made is Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And from what it looks like, and going by desperation of Rahul Gandhi, it seems that he will face a resounding defeat in 2024 again.
Okay.
I mean, God forbid,
we'll come to the 2024 elections
at that time,
in some time.
Managing himself and conducting himself is absolutely unacceptable.
I want to zoom out and go across to the other panelists. I'll start by asking Sanjay Jha for his views on this because you've heard from the BJP and the Congress counter attack on each other on the issue of whether Rahul is in the right and the wrong. You've been tracking politics for a long time. Does it appear odd to you that Rahul Gandhi goes out, asks for European and American help in saving India's democracy? Sanjay?
Rahul, not at all. We live in a global village. This program, when it is uploaded on YouTube, will be watched by my brother in New York, by my cousin in London, by my friend in Tokyo, by my associates of the past in New Zealand and somebody in Haiti. What's a big deal? I mean, you know, how can you expect him to be inconsistent? When during the Bharat Jodo Yatra and over the last several years, Rahul Gandhi and the opposition, by the way, has questioned the authoritarian, manifestations of this government. You want him to go to London and suddenly say, no, Indian democracy is in fantastic health when the Economist has called India a flawed democracy? When you have the Freedom Index talking about India actually becoming an elected autocracy? You think that the BJP spokesperson here, who talks about foreign intervention, can I give him one example of what that is? That was the most brazen, blatant misdemeanor in global politics. you had the Prime Minister of India endorsing an incumbent President of the United States by saying, "Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar." This is during an election year in America. I mean, you cannot reach a lower denominator in terms of foreign policy that Mr. Modi demonstrated. The critical point, Rahul, that we need to understand here, that end of day, Rahul Gandhi is in the UK, but nobody is stopping the Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy, for 9 years. Not a single press conference other than a few choreographed TV interviews that nobody takes seriously at all. So that is the problem that the BJP has. And I think Rahul Gandhi, listen, I've been critical of him over the last couple of years in terms of some leadership decisions. But you have to take your hats off to the fact that he spoke with a cool, calm demeanor. And I'll call the bluff of the BJP here on your show. The debate on which he talks about the US and the UK and other democracies not commenting on India is linked to the BBC episode. Now, let me tell you what has been written in the worldwide media. And by the way, New York Times and the BBC taking on their own government. The debate has been that when the income tax in India raided the BBC, Mr. Sunak kept silent, and the US president and the entire State Department actually chose to be, typically diplomatic template, we want to not comment on it at this point. I think Rahul's context of the telling the other governments that, are you even aware of what's going on in this country, is not intervention. It's about actually abdicating your diplomatic responsibility just because you're getting some commercial and probably
so let's hear from Sushant Sarin. Your argument is that because there are commercial interests, because India is a rising power, therefore the countries in Europe, the United States, not taking on India in the way that they would in the past. And Rahul Gandhi is entitled to draw the world's attention to what he thinks is wrong with India's democracy. He's in the opposition, that's his job. I hold him back from doing his job. Sushant Sarin.
Rahul, I don't think anybody has any problem with Rahul Gandhi going and, talking about Indian democracy, even if in disparaging terms. I think the problem which many people among us have is precisely the fact that you have raised, that he is seeking intervention. He is seeking a kind of an intervention. Why are you guys so quiet? Why are you not doing something about it? What does he expect them to do about it? Frankly, the Western media, yes, has been unremittingly hostile and in some cases very unfairly so. For example, on the entire COVID crisis, did the Western countries handle it really well? I don't think so. Were there not dead bodies in truck trailers out there? Did they ever photograph it the way they photographed the scenes of Shamshan Ghats? So there has been a sustained attack on this government, which is okay, which is fair enough, right? One doesn't have a problem with that. But to say that, the world needed Mr. Rahul Gandhi to go out there and inform them what is happening in India is to actually attribute to them a level of ignorance which I think is not entirely correct, because most of those countries have functioning missions in India, which obviously would be filing daily reports. Now, clearly those countries would be seeing, and their embassies would be reporting to them, that yes, Mr. Gandhi did a Bharat Jodo Yatra. He walked the entire length of the country. Was he stopped anywhere? Was there any obstacle put in his path? Was he not free to speak out there? He goes to Britain and he says that my voice is shut. I cannot go to a university in India and speak. How many universities has he gone to in India and actually spoken to students out here? That's a fact, right? Do you think all of those things are simply brushed under the carpet? But having said that, I must say one thing, that there is a battle of perceptions about this government outside India. And I think the strategic communications of this government have been very clumsy, to say the least. In the sense that some of the impressions which many of those countries have gained need to be dispelled and the truth needs to be brought out. For example, on the BBC documentary, my issue is not so much that it was a hit job on what happened in Gujarat, because you could do a documentary on a riot after riot after riot under the Congress dispensation, and I can recount them to you. Moradabad, Meerut, Maliana, Bhiwandi, Bombay, Bhagalpur. I could rattle off one after another, right? Indian democracy was safe at that point of time. How come? there was single party domination for many, many years, for many decades in fact. Indian democracy was safe. How come? Journalists were put in prison. There were gag orders on journalists, on the press during many occasions in the previous era.
It's quite bizarre.
Yet democracy was safe. So the point is that, there is an argument which this government needs to make, and it has been very clumsy in making that argument.
Okay.
But to say that democracy is in danger simply because one particular party is unable to win elections and another party is dominating the political scene right now, and that might not last forever.
Sushant Sarin's argument, Swati, is that one party is winning again and again, one party is losing again and again, which is why the party that's losing is seeing everything wrong with Indian democracy. If they were to win in a state like Himachal, or if they win any state election in the next few months, at that time democracy wouldn't be in danger. When the Supreme Court comes out and says the EC's functioning needs to change, then democracy is not in danger. Otherwise, when things aren't going their way, that's when Rahul Gandhi thinks Indian democracy needs foreign intervention. Swati Chaturvedi.
Look, Rahul, I hold no brief for Rahul Gandhi. I've often criticized him. But here on this particular thing, I think it's, what Mr. Malviya said, it's a very artificial distinction that what Mr. Modi was doing was talking to the Indian diaspora. I mean, what Mr. Modi said was unacceptable. What Rahul Gandhi has said, I don't know what the context is, I find unacceptable, and I think Rahul Gandhi should really stop ad-libbing. He's gotten into a lot of trouble, a lot of hot water, always because he seems to just, speak off the cuff. Now, it is today, the way the country is, why the fact that Mr. Modi has not held a press conference for 9 years. He's the only Prime Minister in India's history not to do so. Even I.K. Gujral held press conference, even Deve Gowda held press conference. So, this is a huge thing. And as members of the media, we should all be questioning all of this. The fact that there is a perception crisis of this government outside is very clear. And because of reasons like this, Mr. Modi will not have a press conference. The government will, shut down institutions like CPR. All of this is not, democracy is a common good. It's a global good. So Rahul Gandhi going out and talking about it, and do we expect him to be Mr. Modi's personal cheerleader? He's not.
Okay, let Amit Malviya respond to what you're saying.
He'll say all these things. And the other, no.
Go on, Swati.
Let me finish. I have one more thing to say. The other thing I want to say is that, this is a battle of perceptions. If you don't like the BJP, you're going to say Rahul Gandhi is doing fine. He's not Mr. Modi's personal cheerleader. If you like the BJP, you're going to get all angry and upset and say, Mr. Modi said it to the diaspora, but Rahul Gandhi is saying it to the British Parliament. I mean, this is, as a journalist, I think it's a storm in a teacup.
Amit Malviya, Swati's argument is there are serious challenges to India's democracy. Think tanks are being raided. There is a sense that the government is unhappy with criticism, and therefore Rahul Gandhi wants to go abroad to raise his voice, as the Prime Minister did. This difference between speaking to the diaspora and speaking to the British Parliament is only a marginal difference. Both have leaders speak out against their country at international fora. Nothing turns on it. Amit Malviya.
The problem with people like Swati and the assorted activist gang which wants to target Mr. Modi and his government is that they are economical with truth and they make sweeping statements. I just heard Swati say that Prime Minister Modi has not held a press conference. Why don't you tell her, Rahul, that Mr. Puri and Kalli Puri, your promoters, meet the Prime Minister fairly regularly? Number one. Number two, she said that the CPR and other institutions have been shut down. No, CPR has not been shut down. Just that their FCRA license, given the source of funding, which was unqualified, has been put under radar, and they have been told that you cannot accept foreign currency funding from sources that are not kosher. It is not the same as shutting down institutions. It is just ensuring that you do not have vested interest, have a play in public discourse and policy of the Indian government and the Indian public at large. So when you make these statements on national television and you want to be critical of Prime Minister Modi, and when you are not rooted in truth or reality, you come out looking very ordinary, like Swati just did. Secondly, again, it's another thing to speak to the diaspora who have a stake in India's growth and India's future, and it is quite another to go to British MPs and go to the Parliament of Britain and make an appeal. It is quite another thing to speak to a bunch of foreign journalists and seek intervention of Europe and America. Let's be very clear, India is not an India of the 70s or the 80s, which depends on these Western powers for its existence. We are a powerful country, the world is looking towards us. The number of people who have sought India's intervention in the Ukraine-Russia war should tell you where we stand.
Okay.
India is today the president of the G20 coalition, one of the most powerful groupings in the world. Europe has its own problem. UK is now behind India as far as the size of the economy is concerned. We will be very soon ahead of other European countries. So let America, which is fighting a great deal of racial discontentment in their own country, a failing economy, high inflation, they can't be dictating to India. I mean, if Rahul Gandhi thinks that whether Europe or US or for that matter UK can intervene and save India's democracy because Indians have rejected Rahul Gandhi, he is living in La La Land.
Okay, Sushant.
Rahul, actually, I have a question from you. You are a Sikh. Are you a second-class citizen in this country?
I don't feel like a second-class citizen at all. However, I do think that there are challenges to every democracy. There are challenges in India, there are challenges in Europe, there are challenges in the United States, and those challenges, people need to be aware of,
Rahul,
and they need to be fought. Yeah, go on, Sushant.
Rahul, for somebody, you know, as senior opposition leader like Mr. Rahul Gandhi, to go to the UK or to any other country for that matter, and to openly say out there that Sikhs are second-class citizens in India, as are Muslims, as are Christians, it's not even true. So what is he trying to do? It's, you know, it's, I don't know, unless of course there is something seriously wrong with the people who are advising him or misadvising him. How can an Indian political leader go out, say out there at a time when we are certainly seeing a certain ferment in Punjab? What is he trying to do? Light the fires out there?
Let Supriya respond to that.
The purpose of
at a time
like
when
this?
Punjab is in ferment, to say Sikhs are feeling like second-class citizens, that's like trying to put some kind of a matchstick in a fire.
I strongly disagree with every word that Sushant Sareen, who I once used to respect a lot, has spoken on the show, but I am not going to call him ordinary like the BJP spokesperson just called another commentator. I just disagree with him. I refute every word that he has said, and I want to say something. Amit Malviya ne ek sach bola is show pe. He has spoken one truth, that this is not an India of the 70s. You are absolutely damn right about it. Because the India of the 70s split Pakistan into two and changed the geography of this country because of a decisive leadership of Indira Ji and the supreme valor and courage of our armed forces. You, on the other hand, sit there, keep turning our patrolling points into buffer zones. You do not squeak a word on China. The PNA says, what's the fuss about? Your Prime Minister says nobody has entered. We say the same thing. You do not have the courage to even name China, or for that matter, your good friend Adani. So you're right. We are not an India of the 70s. I also want to say the lack of democracy, you want to see a proof. The proof of the pudding is absolutely in eating. Where is the lack of democracy? Here, a spokesperson of the ruling party says just because some proprietors and senior editors go and meet the PM over a cup of tea or coffee or whatever it may be, a meal, democracy is alive and press conferences are happening. Do you even understand? Can you even spell press conference? Press varta Hindi mein or press conference English mein spelling samajhte hain aap uski? It's ridiculous for you to make these arguments because you have gotten used to a system where the Prime Minister will be asked, tonic kya lete hain kya? Thakte kyun nahi? Aam kaise khate hain? Choose kar ya kaat kar? We have got our democracy to an extent where the Prime Minister has asked these questions. We have got our democracy to an extent where two houses of parliament do not see the Prime Minister answer on Adani when he speaks for 2 hours 40 minutes. A man who's saddled with corruption charges, who's saddled with charges of Benami money being diverted into India through a web of shell companies. You want to hide behind the Supreme Court Committee, while the Supreme Court Committee's terms of references, review of regulatory framework. What about the charges? About regulation, about Mr. Adani that continue to plague this government.
Okay, Amit Malviya,
everybody knows.
Supriya's response is that the
What
communication is
It's very
one-sided
rich for you
in
to
the
sit here and say
context
the
of
truth
what
that
the
you're saying.
Prime Minister and the government wish to communicate. The questions that the likes of Rahul Gandhi, Supriya Shrineth and the others are asking, those questions aren't being addressed, and they cite that as an example of India's democracy not being open. Let Mr. Malviya respond to that.
Look, Rahul, the Congress has started sounding jade and repetitive. They come on every show and say the same thing, which does not resonate with anybody because it's not the truth. The only time that China entered India is when Nehru was the Prime Minister, and the second time they did was when UPA was in power between 2010 and 2013. There were more than 600 incursions when Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, and roughly 740 square kilometer land was encroached. So these are matters of truth. Their own NSA has put this on record, but they insist on trying to paint this government as someone which allowed China to enter. That is not the truth. Secondly, and I say this again, the Congress can lock themselves in a room and speak to themselves for all they want, but the truth is the people of India are not listening to them, and that's why they're frustrated. If you see this entire program, the Congress spokesperson has been screeching and shouting. She's hysterical. I mean, is that how you make an argument if you have truth by your side? Of course not. And that's what Rahul Gandhi does, and that's what their spokespeople do. That's what their supporters like Sanjay Jha and Swati Chaturvedi do. They're economical but true. They make sweeping statements, but it's not cutting ice with the people. And that is where the problem is, and that's where the frustration lies. The fact is, Rahul, that Mr. Modi has given India a governance model. He has ensured that the value of Indian passport goes up significantly. We are no more dependent on foreign countries, and we don't seek their endorsement. Let me make that very clear. We are not a country, and we are not somebody like Indira Gandhi who would accept money from American agencies or Russian agencies to run her party and her government. That is the big difference between 70s, 80s and the country that we are today. We speak about Atmanirbharta. We are in Amrit Kal, and that is the golden period that we want to live in India. The Congress can be upset and frustrated because clearly they have reasons to be so. Nobody is buying their bile. You understand? And I can understand for somebody that has been in power for almost 6 decades to be out of power and not have any hope on horizon. It can be frustrating, but you can't keep your frustration on the country.
Okay, I'm out of time. Sanjay Jha has his hand up. I'm going to give him an opportunity to make a concluding comment. Sanjay.
Rahul, you know, the BJP spokesperson cannot be so disingenuous. This is a very intelligent panel here, and the viewers, I'm sure, I have enormous respect for them. You know, when he says that, you know, we don't need the BBC, we don't need to listen to the Western media, my friend, let me tell you, I've been a banker. The Prime Minister of India has gone with a shopping bag and literally begged for foreign direct investment. And your spokesperson come on TV shows and say, you know what, we got this much money from America, we got this much money from the UK. Well, let me tell you, you go down on your knees with a shopping bag for dollars and for pounds. So you all also have to take the criticism of what the Western media says about you.
If you've been an investment banker, you know more than anyone else. No investor invests, no matter whether you're begging or pleading. They invest only if they think it makes sense and if they will get money.
So you can't
they don't invest because somebody's requesting for money. But anyway, Amit Malviya will make a quick counter and then we wrap up. Amit.
You can't have the cake and eat it too.
Look, very quickly. First of all, Sanjay Jha used to sell mutual funds, as far as I know. And I've been a corporate banker, so I know investment better than what Sanjay Jha can ever tell you about. Secondly, he speaks about BBC. The BBC has been under the radar of the income tax authorities, not after the NDA came to power, but even while the UPA was in power. The fact is that if you have to operate in India, you have to follow the laws. You cannot have transfer pricing that goes vary. You can't underreport your income. You will be questioned whether you are BBC or you are anybody else. You are not above Indian law. That is point number one. Point number two, people are investing in the India story because they see hope in this country. They see political stability. They see an economic environment that is suitable to them. They see a policy regime that is going in their favor. That is why big companies are setting up manufacturing shops here. People will not go and invest in a country just because the Prime Minister has been there. Because Nehru used to do that, Indira used to do that, Rajiv used to do that. In fact, Dr. Manmohan Singh would go and get a tap on his back from Obama, but not investment. So clearly, India has been put at a pedestal where we deal as equals. Prime Minister Modi today is the most popular world leader.
You
He
can't have the
attracts,
cake and eat it
people
too,
to
my
our
friend.
country.
Understand
as far
it.
as investments goes, as far as our
Union
position in the world order is concerned. So we've really come a long way. It's quite unfathomable for the Congress to imagine the India that we are today. Far cry from the one that went with a begging bowl.
Okay, I'm out of time.
Giving out orders
Absolutely lopsided.
hundreds
You
of
choose to keep
Boeings,
completely
and
quiet when I'm
America
quiet.
and UK are
And you want to
claiming
keep
that this is
Okay, if you've seen this debate, if you watch this debate, you know that Indian democracy is far from dead, okay?